Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Benji-Sales live chat. It's so good to be back. It's so good to see everybody. How are you doing today? I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to see everyone. It has been a bit of a slow week in video game news, right? It has been crawling. There's really not much. I think the main thing that we can blame this on primarily is the fiscal year just ended for a lot of people, right? End of March, that's when the fiscal year ended for most companies. So right now we're in like that weird time frame where they are basically wrapping up their last fiscal year, getting all the data collected, getting ready to make their presentations and all of that. And they haven't really started giving like forward looks into what to expect for the next fiscal year. So we're in that like really weird time period where we're right in between the two fiscal years. And boy, has it resulted in just about nothing to talk about in the video game industry. But luckily for us, right before I got on this chat, we got some news out of CD Projekt. So that gives us a few things we could talk about. We found out that Cyberpunk 2077 has sold over 18 million copies. This makes it one of the best-selling RPGs of all time. It is worth noting, though, another clear indication that we got from this is that by the end of 2020, that game had sold 13.7 million copies, and now it's only at 18 million, right? So in the last, what is that, year and some change, because that game came out in December 2020. So in the last, what is that, about 16 months, it sold a little under 5 million copies, which normally for a lot of games, selling 5 million units, after launch would be a really good result. But whenever you have such a big launch like that, clearly legs were impacted by the state of that game. But it's a huge number overall. We can talk about that if you want to. We found out that The Witcher 3 has sold over 40 million copies, becoming not only one of the best-selling RPGs ever, one of the best-selling games of any genre ever in the video game industry. So staggering numbers for The Witcher 3. We can talk about that. The Witcher franchise now is up to over 65 million units sold. Obviously, the majority of that coming from Witcher, but still, the other games combined, if we know it's 40 million for that, that's, over, 25 million copies between Witcher 1 and 2. So also huge sales for the first two games long-term as well. We can talk about the continued woes that are facing PlayStation 5 hardware. The shortages are absolutely brutal, and it is really impacting them in one of their strongest markets, which is Europe. So we can talk about that if you want to. We can talk about Xbox Series performance in Europe, because inversely, they're doing very well. Xbox Series, of course, shortages are still holding it back overall, but it has now outsold PlayStation 5 the last 2 months in a row in Europe. I actually don't know if that's ever happened, and if it has, it definitely hasn't happened since the Xbox 360 generation. We also found out that in the UK specifically, we talked about this last chat, but we can now pair it with what we found out today, and that is that, Xbox outsold the Switch even and PlayStation in the UK. So Xbox has really been able to surge lately, while PlayStation 5 is having huge issues. So we can talk about that if you want to, and really any topics you want to talk about. So if this is your first time ever as part of my live chat, basically the way it works, it's a stream, it's a show, it's 100% driven by you, your comments, your questions. We just talk about the latest, greatest in the video game industry and break it all down. There's going to be two ways to do that. First of all, of course, there's the free method. You just type a question, whatever you want. It pops into chat, and I get to as many free questions as I possibly can. If you want to guarantee that I get to your question, the way to do that is going to be the super chat option. Type a donation, whatever you want. It alerts me, and I get to super chats immediately. As always, though, don't feel pressured or obligated to donate into chat. It's just a way to help support me and the channel. All right, everyone, I think that's it off the top. No real housekeeping notes or anything like that. I did just get done lifting, so allow me to be gross and drink this protein shake really quick before I get into your questions. I'll step away from the mic so you don't have to hear me. It's going to take 5 seconds, all right? And then I'm going to get to your questions. So 1 sec. All right, hopefully you didn't have to hear that too much because that was gross. Okay. All right, let's start diving into your comments and questions. I think we have a 5 super chat right off the bat, so let me hit that super chat. We got Plastic Hearts Podcast here kicking us off with a 5. Thank you so much, Plastic Hearts Podcast. Benji Boy the Goat. How dope is Hazmat? Also, what are your spring, summer plans in life? Okay, so just a fun question to kick us off before we get into video games. Don't worry, everyone. We're diving straight into video games after this. Hazmat Shemaev, very, very good. Some people have been saying how, this fight exposed Hazmat. It's like, no, that's not true at all. It really just shows how much people were underestimating Gilbert Burns. In fact, if anything, I would say that this result is a lot better for Hazmat than if he would have went in there and finished Gilbert Burns in the first round, because we found out a lot about him. First of all, we found out that he's got cardio, right? Like, that's always been rumored, but that was an insane pace for 3 very hard rounds. You're basically not going to get into a more crazy wild firefight than what that fight was, and he was still going in the third. So we found out the dude's got a gas tank. We found out he has a ridiculous chin. Gilbert Burns hit him with some nuclear bombs, and they did not put him to sleep. And he ended up winning the fight. So to be honest with you, it wasn't a disappointment at all. It just proves that he is truly one of the elite welterweights. Now, there's going to be a lot of debate. Can he actually beat Kamaru Usman? That is a harder task for sure than Gilbert Burns. But the main thing that we found out, the dude's legit. He's a legitimate top 5 welterweight in the world. And we found out that people were underestimating Gilbert Burns. This dude's an absolute beast, and they went to war. So, total stud. My plans for spring and summer, really just keep doing what I'm doing, working all day, or all night, actually, mostly. I mostly work evenings. I'm going on vacation in June. I'm going to be going down to, what's the name of it? I can't remember. Somewhere down in Florida. My brain's not working at the moment. So I'm going to be going on vacation in June. And then besides that, man, just working, covering the video game industry, doing everything that I can to try to balance everything in life. Playing games, raising a daughter, going to work, and also covering video games as best as I can. So I'm going to keep trying to juggle all that. But that's really it, just grinding. Besides June. June, I'll have a nice vacation. Thank you so much for that super chat, Plastic Hearts. And thanks for always being so supportive and awesome, man. Okay, let's start diving into your questions. We have got some rocking. Split End 89, best mod in the business, saying Benji is the bestest boy. Thank you so much. Split End SD saying hi. And SD here with a question. Jeff Grubb said that he heard nothing about Kojima being acquired. Maybe it could be, but is unlikely, his opinion. He also said that the rumors he heard some weeks ago, possibly the one Greg was referring to, he said that the rumor here is a bigger acquisition than Kojima. What do you think? Who could be if true? Well, I can't talk about the second part because I heard the same rumor. And I'm not going to talk about it. And there's a reason Jeff's not talking about it. And that's because most of us are not sure if it's actually legit. So, yeah, there are rumors floating around about an acquisition, and yes, it was not Kojima Productions. I'm not going to say anything else than that, but I also commented on this in the last couple chats that I was hearing this rumor as well. I'm not going to mention the studio, really, and we'll see if anything happens. I'd have no idea if it's going to or not. In regards to the Kojima stuff, so this is my theory on what's happening with Kojima. And this is a theory. This is not insider information. I want to be very, 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 very clear about that. So here's a couple things we can piece together, okay, about what's going on with Kojima. I agree with Jeff's statement that it is probably unlikely Sony acquired Kojima Productions specifically. I don't know. Maybe they did. I just don't think that is currently the studio that they're targeting. But there's a couple things going on here. So the main reason this blew up, did Sony acquire Kojima, is because in the banner, they recently updated their PlayStation Studios banner to include Death Stranding, right? Kind of came out of nowhere, especially considering how long ago that game came out. I have a theory on why that is, and that is because I believe Death Stranding 2 is currently in development over at Kojima Productions. Couple reasons I think that. First of all, there is the Norman Reedus statement from a while back where he said that they are currently negotiating on a sequel, and that was a while back, and a lot of people were like, oh, it couldn't be. He must be referring to the director's cut, but that makes no sense because the director's cut was already announced by then, and also there would have been no ongoing negotiations about a director's cut when the game was already announced to be coming out. They were negotiating truly for a sequel. Norman's not dumb. The guy has done a lot of acting jobs. He understands what's happening if you're negotiating for something. So first of all, we have that piece of info. So that happened a while back. Then suddenly you have this pop into the banner. And also there was another tweet that was just put out today from one of Kojima's, someone he works with. That was a picture of him talking to another member of the Death Stranding cast, the guy that played Die Hard Man. And and then you have this banner. I just think that a Death Stranding sequel's coming, y'all. I really do think that that's what's going on. Again, I don't know that for a fact. This isn't insider information, but there's just a lot of pieces that are coming together that kind of points towards Death Stranding 2. So I believe that is what's going on there. And in regards to the Xbox game, this also makes sense because Kojima gave an interview at the very end of last year, and he said that they're actually working on 2 games. This flew over a lot of people's heads. And I actually forgot about it until I was doing some research. But Kojima himself says there are 2 games currently in development at Kojima Productions. He described one of them as like kind of ambitious and smaller, and he described the other one as like their bigger game. To me, that makes sense. The smaller, probably more ambitious game is the Xbox one because it is rumored that that is running on cloud. So it would make sense that that's a little bit more experimental, a little bit more weird, a little bit more difficult because it's something totally different. It's a cloud-based game. And he said that their other one is, of course, a bigger, it's a bigger project, which would make sense for Death Stranding 2. So there's a lot of pieces there that make a lot of sense to me. So I think that's what's going on there. Death Stranding 2 over at PlayStation and the Xbox Cloud game going on with Microsoft. So that all makes sense. Yep, that's what I think is going on. Again, don't know that for a fact, but all the pieces just make too much sense. Split End 89. With all the trouble with Activision Blizzard and people speaking out, is there any chance it doesn't happen? Yes. I think it goes through, but it's not the slam dunk it once was. You're absolutely correct, Splitting at 89. I am not confident about Activision deal closing at all anymore. Now, does that mean that I think for sure it's not going to happen? No. But this deal is getting way more scrutiny than I ever expected it was going to. And to be honest, I could be wrong here. I haven't talked with anyone at Microsoft about this. But I suspect it is going probably more challenging even than maybe Microsoft expected. Now, again, this is, not insider information. I'm just reading the tea leaves. Of course, there was always going to be a lot of scrutiny over a deal this big. I mean, it's completely gigantic. But we have seen historically that most of these giant acquisitions, particularly in entertainment, go through, right? You had one of the most famous ones, of course, was Disney buying Fox. That, again, I've said it before, and I still believe that to this day. That was way closer to anti-consumer than what is happening currently with Microsoft and Activision, just because there's still way more giant players in the video game industry than where there really is in the movie industry now. We've talked about this a lot. There is still multiple big players in the movie industry, but they are way more consolidated than what's happened in gaming, even to this day. So Disney acquiring Fox was one of those things that it was like, bro, if they can get away with that, it's hard to imagine that Microsoft wouldn't be able to get away with Activision. However, this has really changed. There's way more pushback from government over acquisitions than I expected, and there's just a whole lot of drama. So do I think it's going to go through? I put this right now firmly at 50-50. To me, Activision Blizzard deal going through is a coin flip at this point. Whereas before, if you would have asked me, like the day this was announced, if I thought it was going to happen, I would have been much more like over 90%. Like I really thought it was going to. And I had somebody that is a reporter. I apologize. I can't remember for who. It's one of the major publications. Maybe it was MSN or CNN or one of them. He was interacting with me on Twitter whenever I was talking about this a little while back. And he said a few years ago there was no doubt in his mind that this would go through, but now it's not a sure thing. So I really don't think it is. No, right now it's a 50-50 coin flip to me. Activision Blizzard might happen and it might not. And that is a change from where I originally stood on it. Javier Kolpler. Uncharted movie was a success for Sony and PS Productions. Absolutely. It seems many in Twitter underestimated the movie, saying it will fail. I think The Last of Us show will be even better. Thoughts? Yeah, there's no doubt. Uncharted was a huge success for Sony financially. So here's the thing. General rule of thumb, in the industry for movies, the general rule is that you need 2 to 2.5 times your production budget to break even. That's just the golden rule, between 2 to 2.5 times, somewhere in that range. That's the way these movies are budgeted typically. Whenever you're making your budget and you're looking over at the future, like what's this movie going to earn for us to break even, these studios are thinking we need 2 times to 2.5 times whatever we're going to spend to make this movie. So Uncharted's budget was $120 million, okay? $120 million. So its break-even point, of course, would have been, let's go like more hard for them. Let's say 2.5 times. That would have put them at $300 million to break even off the box office alone. Whereas this movie's box office currently is at $383 million. So this movie's been profitable already just off of its theatrical run. That's before it hits PVOD. That's before it hits streaming. So there's no doubt about it. Uncharted's going to be a super profitable movie for them going forward. The only way Uncharted 2 doesn't happen, which I'm very confident it's going to, especially considering the Sony Pictures CEO who said that this is a new franchise for them. The only way I could see something getting in the way of that would be if they can't convince Tom Holland to come back for a sequel. We don't know if his contract was for a multi-picture deal, but if they only signed him for one, that might make negotiating a little tricky. I think he is still going to come back. He doesn't have a ton of hits outside of Spider-Man, to be honest with you. Spider-Man is huge for him, but he doesn't have 20 different movies that are just making tons of money. It's really Spider-Man and now Uncharted. So I think he'll come back. But that's the only wrinkle here is if they're going to be able to get Tom Holland. But there's no doubt. Hugely financially successful. There's no doubt. Very, very profitable for them in the long term. J-Cat saying, what's up? What is up, J-Cat? So good to see you. Thanks for helping moderate the channel as always and being so awesome, J-Cat. Forzathon is back. Benji, where's the GoldenEye remaster that was supposed to release by now? Seems like it was heavily in the news and then nothing happened. I saw Grubb talk about this, and I think it was Grubb, and if I'm reporting this, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure it was Jeff Grubb. And he had said that, and again, I apologize if it wasn't Grubb, but I'm pretty sure it was him on one of his streams, that the Russia-Ukraine situation is the problem. That the game, of course, features some Russian enemies in it and all of that going on, and that is part of the problem. There has been no discussion on this. I have zero information on this, Forzathon. This is not something I have had any insider info on at all on this project, but I believe that's what's being reported. The Russia-Ukraine situation has made the announcement of this a bit of an issue. Ulfric Stormcloak. If the Activision Blizzard deal somehow gets blocked by shareholders, who do you think Microsoft will go for? Ulfric, this is a genius question because it's funny. I was literally just talking about this with somebody. So if it gets blocked, if I'm Microsoft right now behind the scenes, I would already be trying to line some studios up. Because here's the thing. They are going to still, to fully get Game Pass rocking long term, they still do need more studios, right? As we all know, the big play for Activision Blizzard is Game Pass. It's not to sell Xbox Series consoles. Again, don't get me wrong, I think Microsoft wants to sell 100+ million Xbox Series consoles. But the main pull about getting all these studios is to get 100+ million Game Pass subscribers long term, right? That's the more important deal out of the two. Selling consoles or Game Pass, it's Game Pass subs. And what better way to sell Game Pass subs than franchises like Call of Duty, Overwatch, Diablo, etc. being on that service. So if it somehow doesn't go through, they need to be very prepared and positioned to start rapidly acquiring some independent teams. I don't think, put it this way, if this gets shut down, I don't think Microsoft can just immediately pivot and say, okay, we couldn't get Activision Blizzard. Now we're going to go get Ubisoft. Now we're going to go get EA, right? Like, they're not going to be able to pivot to another publisher, I don't think. It's going to be basically a message that, hey, no one's buying any more giant publishers. That's done. If right? This is a big if, but if that happens, that to me would be the message that the government's sending. It's don't go for publishers. So if this gets turned down, they need to be looking at people like IO Interactive, who's rumored to be making a exclusive game for Microsoft right now. They need to be looking at Avalanche Studios, who we know is making an Xbox exclusive Contraband. They need to be looking at certain Affinity, which as we know is going to be working on Halo Infinite moving forward and is also making an Xbox exclusive game that apparently plays like Monster Hunter. They need to really be ready to go after these studios that they already are forming partnerships with, because they'll need something, and those will be much easier to pass through than a publisher for a couple reasons. A, those companies are not publicly traded, which makes way less roadblocks, right? If you're not a publicly traded company that's worth billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, do I think that the government would step in and not allow them to acquire these studios if they didn't get Activision Blizzard? No. I think it's going to be the big, giant, publicly traded publishers that are going to get shut down. So, Ulfric, those are the types of studios. Ones that are not publicly traded, that are independently owned, and that they have partnerships with. They need to be ready to come in and just swoop those up. So that's what they should be preparing for. But they have amazing lawyers. So, I mean, Microsoft might really think that they can get this Activision Blizzard deal done. They would not have announced this acquisition if they didn't think they could do it. Now, this has happened before where a company thought they could do it and it didn't happen. Look at whenever NVIDIA was trying to buy ARM, right? That got shut down. I'm sure NVIDIA thought they could get away with it. So, they think they can, but it's going to be tough. Their lawyers are really going to have to work hard on this, because the pushback has been pretty severe. Joseph Crank, Benji-Sales, Bungie is getting bigger and bigger. Yep, like 1,000 employees, hundreds of positions open. They want to expand their studio in the US, and they're opening a new studio in Amsterdam, maybe close to Gorilla, and want to expand to series, movies, etc., multimedia, and they're working on a new IP. I think those $3.6 billion Sony expanded on them are going to seem like cheap in some years. Thoughts? I think Bungie will become something like Blizzard or bigger in some years. Ooh, great question. So, long term, can they become someone like Blizzard? Sure. Part of the reason that makes Blizzard, though, so much more valuable is the IP they already own, right? So, moving forward, it's one of those things like, could Bungie become the next Blizzard in the next 10 years? I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's hard financially to say that Bungie's worth more than Blizzard, because the reality is that Blizzard owns Warcraft, owns StarCraft, owns Overwatch, owns Diablo, right? They own these very, 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 very proven properties. While Bungie, the only one that they own that is truly worth a ton of money is Destiny. Now, I'm very bullish about Bungie in the long term. I think they're one of the best studios in the world right now about making service games. So I do think it was a smart buy for Sony in the long run. Yes, I do agree with that. I think that they will make back that money. I think it'll be very successful. Blizzard comparison will be a bit of a tough one just because those IP are so valuable that Blizzard owns. But I do agree with your overall sentiment, Joseph, that long-term, yes, Bungie's going to be a very, very good get for Sony. Very good. Very, very good. There's no doubt about it. Travel Peck. Right now, the world of acquisitions is, if you don't acquire some, we'll do next to you. With all of these acquisitions happening, Sony and Microsoft acquiring big, do you think Sony will acquire small studios who can become big in the future? Or do you think they want to at least make a big acquisition like Bungie or bigger, publisher in the range of 5 to 10 billion? It's a mix. So travel, it's a mix for Sony. I absolutely think that they are targeting someone else huge. Again, I'm not going to talk about the rumor that's floating around. I'm very careful about what I talk about in terms of like leaks and insider stuff. I talk about this all the time because there's so much fake stuff. So nowadays, I used to be a little bit more open about stuff, like when I very first started doing Twitter and stuff. And some of the stuff that I was hearing was just wrong, right? Nowadays, I'm very cautious. I only really talk about or hint at things when I'm very, very, very certain of it. So, you know, are they going to get someone else big? Yes. Bungie's not the only big acquisition. That much I know for sure. But Sony also wants to acquire small studios and grow them over time. And we have proof of that, right? That's exactly what Housemarque is. It's a tiny team. I mean, they're getting bigger now, but in the grand scheme of, you know, development studios, they're very small. Housemarque's very small. If you look at Bluepoint, they're decent size, but I mean, they're not like this gigantic studio, right? It's not someone that's like a 500-person studio team. So they've been out there acquiring multiple teams that are fairly small, and I'm sure the goal long term, hey, if Housemarque starts releasing hit after hit after hit, I'm sure Housemarque's going to grow. I'm sure Bluepoint's going to grow, right? I'm sure these teams are going to grow. I think you're going to see Sony continue to look at small studios. I still think that they're eventually going to go for Ember Lab, for example. But I also think that they're going to buy someone very, very big, too. Yes, somebody on the range of Bungie or even bigger, possibly. Now, a publisher, I think a publisher all depends on Activision Blizzard. All depends on Activision Blizzard. If this goes through and it gets approved and Sony thinks that they can get a publisher for a cheap enough price, maybe you see them go for it. If Activision Blizzard gets shut down, I don't think there's any chance you see Sony try and go for one of the publishers. No way. Like I said, I think it's done. If Activision Blizzard gets shut down, I think publishers are now off the table. I don't think a company's going to want to risk going for an acquisition and it getting shut down. So this will tell a lot. This will tell a lot. Justin Tanhill, what do you think Certain Affinity is working on with Halo Infinite? Well, we actually know. So I don't want to go too into details here, but this did leak, Justin. They are working on a new mode for Halo Infinite. I'm not going to give away all the details here, but it's basically going to be their answer, it sounds like, to a Battle Royale. Sounds like it's not exactly a Battle Royale as we expect it. Sounds like there's going to be some sort of PvP versus E elements. So something to do with like, you're fighting other players, but also big giant enemies or something. Think of it as maybe a bit of an evolution of the Warzone that was in Halo 5. I think that was the one that had that kind of mode. So we already know. It's a big, giant new mode. It's going to be their big, huge, get 100 players together or whatever mode. I don't know if it's going to legit be 100, but like whatever the big, giant mode is, their Battle Royale equivalent, that's what it is. Ubisoft has like, sorry, my allergies are kicking hard, y'all. Travel Peck, Ubisoft has like 50 studios, lots of IPs, and is less than 10 billion. Again, Travel, this completely depends on Activision Blizzard. Totally depends on Activision Blizzard. Sony and nobody's going to go for Ubisoft unless this gets approved. Matt McCowan, quarterly results will be next week. What's your expectations on the three big gaming companies, and when do you think Microsoft will pass Sony in terms of revenue? Also, any ideas on Forza Motorsport? When do you think we can get behind the wheel on a truly next-gen game? Thanks and love the show. And hit the like button, Matt says. Thank you so much. So, Forza, I have to be careful about because I actually have some inside information on Forza Motorsport. So, I can't talk much about Forza. Because I'm not somebody like Grubb that's what he does. I don't consider myself that. So soon, Forza Motorsport, you will be playing soon. That's all I will say. Unless something radical happens in the next few months, but that's all I'm going to say. Unless something crazy happens in the next few months, you'll be playing Forza Motorsport soon-ish. Now, quarterly results. What are my expectations for the three big gaming companies? Great question. I love talking about this kinds of stuff. Let's go down the list. Nintendo. Here's a wild card, okay? There's a bit of a wild card situation with Nintendo. One thing we know is that hardware sales continue to be excellent for the Switch. So expect great results there. They're going to talk about how Switch hardware did awesome and all that kind of stuff like they always do, right? Switch is a complete monster. Software, again, expect great results for games like Kirby. Expect great continued legs for games like Pokemon Legends Arceus and all of this kinds of stuff. So expect great software results, great hardware results, tons of profit, killing it. The wild card for me will be, will Nintendo hint at or acknowledge new hardware coming this fiscal year? Because I guarantee you, I'm pretty darn confident about this, that shareholders are going to ask. Because they've been asking in general recently. Then we have all these rumblings that have been going on. They've been going on forever, but even more so lately, about potentially next gen coming with Switch 2 around the corner or some sort of new Switch. A lot of people are theorizing that the reason Breath of the Wild's delayed is to coincide with the launch of their new system. I'm not one of these people that says that's a fact. I also don't think it's impossible, though. To me, the wild card with Nintendo will be if they will acknowledge. I don't think you'll get any details, y'all. Let's say theoretically, and again, I'm not 100% confident in this. Let's just say theoretically, the plan is to launch Switch 2 in March of next year, right? Because I don't think it's coming this year. No matter what, it's not 2022. If it's this fiscal year, I don't think it'll be until March of next year. If this happens and they choose to acknowledge it, that's about gonna be it. They're just gonna be like, expect new hardware this fiscal year, and that'll be it. I don't think they're gonna tell you anything else about it other than to their investors, hey, this fiscal year there will be new hardware. So that's a wild card for me in terms of likely or unlikely. I don't place it like as a super likely thing, but I also don't think it's necessarily impossible. But that's going to be the thing to keep your eyes on for Nintendo. Because no matter what, Switch 2 is coming out either in 2023 or 2024 at the latest. It will be out in the next 2 years. There's no doubt Switch 2 comes out next 2 years. So next, let's go to PlayStation. The wild card here for PlayStation is going to be what is their forecast for PS5 hardware over the next 3 months. As we know, the last 3 months have been an utter disaster. There is literally no other way to discuss this, y'all. There's no other way to talk about it. It sucks. I'm not happy about this. But PlayStation 5 sales the last 3 months have been a disaster. There's no other ways to phrase it. They shipped a very low amount of units. It's falling far behind PlayStation 4 now launch aligned. And that appears to be continuing right now in early April. Again, this has nothing to do with PlayStation 5 demand. It has to do with manufacturing capabilities. So the most important metric you're going to be looking for out of PlayStation is what are they forecasting for this quarter. In my opinion, it has to be higher than what they did last quarter. If it's the same as last quarter or less, I mean, y'all, it's dire straits. Like, there's no other way to phrase it. Does it mean Sony is doomed? No. It doesn't mean Sony's doomed. It doesn't mean PlayStation as a brand is doomed. It just means that they're going to very struggle to catch up to PlayStation 4 over the next few years, to be honest. If it's another very low forecast, it's going to be just really hard to keep pace with what PS4 did. So it doesn't mean that they can never catch PS4 again. It just means that's going to take some time. It's going to take quite a bit of time to get back to where they were last generation. So that's your most important metric to be looking at. What can they manufacture this next quarter? In terms of software, I'm sure that software sales overall will probably be up year over year. There's not a whole lot for that comparison. And they had Horizon Forbidden West launch. They had Uncharted The Lost Legacy launch. Gran Turismo obviously came out right after the quarter, right? That was March. So they'll have Gran Turismo in the quarter as well. So software sales will be up. Yeah, software sales for first party will be up year over year, which will be nice for them. So that's something else to look at. For Xbox, I expect the exact inverse of what happened with PlayStation. I expect Microsoft on their conference call to specifically note hardware sales. They're not going to give you, I don't think, the raw number of units sold, but I expect Microsoft to give you the percentage growth, which they've done in the past. This looks like it was a great quarter for Xbox Series sales, particularly the month of March seems to have been very huge for them. So I think you're going to see Satya on the conference call specifically note that. They're going to talk about how Xbox Series consoles globally continue to outpace Xbox One launch aligned. They're going to say how this was a great quarter for hardware. Software, first party seems to be, they didn't have much last year, so they probably will still have year-over-year growth just from continued sales of things like Forza and Halo, even though those have come down a lot. It's probably still more than what they had going on last year in this quarter. So it'll be all right for first-party software, but don't expect anything amazing there. They didn't launch anything big, nothing new. Sony had a lot more success with first-party software the last 3 months than Microsoft. So that's kind of your flip there. Microsoft's going to be talking about how great hardware was. Sony's going to be like, dang, hardware sucks. Sony's going to have a lot of software sales, and Microsoft's probably going to have not as strong of software sales. I don't think you're going to get a Game Pass number from Microsoft. They had no big first-party launches in the last 3 months, and that seems to be what really drives Game Pass subscriptions. So I don't think you'll get an update there because I don't think they had a ton of new subs, but I could be wrong. So, long answer, but it was a fun question. So thank you. Thank you for that. Oh, and when will Microsoft pass Sony in revenue? Oh, I have no idea. That's so hard to say. To me, it's an if. I'm not even convinced they will. It's not impossible, but I mean, that is such a wild card, Matt. I hate to say it. That's impossible for me to predict. It could never happen, or it could happen in the next 5 years, or if they get a ton of Game Pass subs. It's so hard to say. Yoda Soda. Hello there, Benji. Regarding Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga selling extremely well. Yeah, it sold amazing. Unbelievable sales. I don't know if you saw, but Christopher Dring just tweeted out today that with physical sales and digital combined, the launch was so big in the UK, it was only slightly behind Elden Ring's launch sales. I mean, that's insane, right? And this game also did gigantic numbers on Steam, just crushing every Lego game previously, and it's not even close. You said you wanted to talk about the future of Traveler's Tales Lego games is bright. Can you talk about that? Does this mean the Lego company is happy with the sales for this game? There's zero question. Every person involved with this game's happy. And reviews, and they will double down with Traveler's Tales games to create even more Lego games. Yoda Soda, there's no doubt that this proved to them that they can still make successful games. You will get another Traveler's Tales Lego game. Zero question. I mean, I'm telling you, this is a gigantic launch. Like, it's a huge launch. So there's no question. No one involved with this game could be disappointed. There's no way that's possible. So you'll get another game from them. Does it mean that you're going to get, like... I made a tweet about this. It's a mistake if they continue to pump these games out like they were. I don't remember the exact number. I want to say it was something insane. Like they released 9 licensed Lego games in a period of like 3 years. That's way too much. The market will not support that. And your development cycle can't even support something like that. So my guess, Yoda Soda, moving forward, you will still get Traveler's Tales Lego games. They're just going to be, spread out farther apart. Maybe one a year or one every 2 years. That would be what I would expect, okay? Don't expect the cadence that they were at before, where it's just like you're getting a new Lego game every, 3 to 6 months. I cannot see that happening again in the future. So probably something like that. They'll make more, but it'll be like every 1 to 2 years before they come out. Casual Gamer. So in June, PlayStation will remove PS Now and make PS Plus Premium the only way to access PS3 titles. Isn't that a bit anti-consumer to force consumers to buy Premium if they want to play legacy titles? Anti-consumer might be a stretch. A bummer, I would say yes. Of course, I'm going to be way more in favor of what Microsoft's doing, where backwards compatibility is just free. And not only is backwards compatibility free, many of these games are enhanced. So, if I'm going to compare, whose strategy is better, to me, there's zero doubt about it. It's Xbox in terms of backwards compatibility. I would say anti-consumer is a stretch for this, but is it something I love? No. I don't love that the most expensive tier of their subscription service is what gets you retro games. That does seem a little extreme. But I would say don't pay it. If you really don't want that, I would say don't pay it. So I wouldn't go as far as to say anti-consumer, but I would definitely say there's just no debate that Microsoft has the better backwards compatibility strategy of the two. No debate. Sean Macias, when do you think God of War Ragnarok will come out? Right now, I think that game's coming out pretty late in the year. It's still going to make this year. I'm pretty confident in that. But I don't expect that game, I don't think. I'd love to be wrong. But I would not expect that game to be coming out in the next, 3 months. I would say September at the absolute earliest, and it could be even an October or November game. So I'm expecting God of War to still make this year, but it's going to be late this year. September at the earliest, and I won't be surprised if this slips all the way to November. Would not be surprised. And then Casual Gamers following that up, saying Some people don't play online and would like to play old PS1, 2, and 3 titles. Why remove the option to subscribe to a server to play those games? Why remove the accessibility to play legacy titles? Why lock out a huge part of PlayStation Legacy behind a premium paywall? Why not make it available separately or available in the middle tier PS Plus? Casual, I don't disagree with any of that. I think it's very bizarre that the most expensive tier is the retro one. I just don't think it's anti-consumer, because that's a pretty powerful term to use. But I do agree that I don't like it. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I think it is, without question, way behind Microsoft's stance, for example. So, I would not pay for that. Unless, like, you really think it's worth it, right? I'm not saying no one should pay for this. If you really think it's worth it, then pay it. But if it's something you can live without and you're against it, then don't pay for it. Marco Meyerless. Benji, why do you think EA is deciding against Battlefront 3 and instead continuing with lackluster Battlefield titles? Wow, what a question. This is going to be interesting to talk about. That will now have to win over audiences when Star Wars IP seems more profitable. Yeah, I mean, the Battlefield franchise is in huge trouble. There's just no other way to face it. It's in gigantic trouble. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's now fallen under 1,000 players a day on Steam, and not only that, Battlefield 5 is far, far bigger than Battlefield 2042 is. That's not a great look when your older game isn't just slightly bigger, it's pulling in way bigger numbers. I believe something I saw posted the other day was there was like 1,000 people on Steam in Battlefield 2042, and there was something like 17,000 in Battlefield 5, so like way more people. Battlefield 2042 is a disaster. There's no other way to talk about that game. You know, there's no other way to phrase it. It is a true borderline franchise killing disaster what happened with that game. Do I think they could never bring Battlefield back? No, I don't want to go that far, right? It's an IP that has been super popular in the past. I think there's things they can do to make it better. First of all, they got to make the map smaller and the player count smaller. I know that sounds weird because usually as gamers, we are always saying how bigger is better. In this case, I do not believe so. I believe going to that many players and that big of maps completely ruined the flow of the game. Like, completely ruined it. When I was playing this game at launch, and that was whenever it had a lot of players, unlike now, Battlefield's always had this thing like, oh, you're running around and having, nobody to fight. Like, that's been a thing since, forever, since the map started getting pretty big. But 2042 took that to a whole new level. I mean, we're talking just huge amounts of time where I'm running across a ridiculous sized map and there's no one around me. It completely ruined the flow of the game. So the next Battlefield needs to bring things down a little bit. I'm not saying you go down to 20 players, but do you really need over 100 and these ginormous maps? I don't think so. So I would hope to see them bring the player count down, the map size down, and really focus on making the flow of the game feel great. So Battlefield's not past saving, but I do think, keep in mind, Battlefront 2 was a disaster for them before it ended up being fixed. So that's kind of why Battlefront 3 didn't happen. Because they were like, man, we had issues with Battlefront 2. We think that Battlefield can be much bigger, so we're going to go all in on Battlefield. And unfortunately for EA and DICE, that didn't work out either. So I don't know that Battlefront 3 will never happen. I wouldn't rule that out because EA is still making Star Wars games, but it's not happening anytime soon, right? So, yeah, they're going to have to really do some things to turn Battlefield around. Really, because that franchise is in a lot of trouble. I think we had a super chat or two that I missed. All right, let me see. Timmer. Yep, Timmer with a 2 super chat. Thank you so much, Timmer, and thanks for being in every chat. QuakeCon 2022 expectations, plus keep being awesome. It's a great question because the question is how much is going to be at Microsoft's E3 that would typically be QuakeCon announcements and how much would be new, or saved for that. If it's true, as some rumors have said, that there is a Quake reboot happening, and I have zero info about this, y'all, zero, so don't take this as me saying there is. I'm just saying I've seen people talking that there's rumors that there's a Quake reboot happening. If that is true and it's ready for an announcement, I would think since QuakeCon's such like a long-term thing, I think you hold that from your E3 conference and announce it at QuakeCon for those like hardcore fans, right, to really get them pumped. So if this is true, again, I have no idea if it is, but there have been rumors rumbling that, it is rebooting Quake. I would say that's the place to do it. If it's ready for an announcement. If it's ready for an announcement, keep that out of E3. Keep your Microsoft E3. You can have some Bethesda stuff, but keep Quake specifically for QuakeCon. So that would be the main thing, Timmer. Other than that, I'm really not sure what would be announced there. Maybe if there's another, I think they're done with Doom Eternal expansions, I think they said. So I couldn't see another Doom, expansion announced because I think they said they're done. And it's too early to announce a third Doom game, in my opinion. So that would be it. Real long shot, maybe a third Doom game, but I think it's too early, and maybe a Quake reboot. Those are the two things, I guess. And then I think there was another super chat. There was. Benji here with a 5. Benji, can Ashton Banks... I got to read this just because it's funny. It's cracking me up. This isn't part of the super chat, but Ashton Banks says, "Hey, Daddy." Okay. You're making me laugh. Benji here with a 5. Benji, can Sony and Microsoft, I think you mean like face a third holiday with shortages? What would the impact of a repeat of last year? Is it why PSVR 2 could be delayed? Man, they might not have a choice, Benji. And I know it sucks, but here's the thing. It seems Microsoft specifically has, I don't want to say completely fixed, but they have really improved their shortage problems specifically. They're not fixed, but they're vastly improved. So I think if Microsoft's able to get into a decent spot this time of year, Xbox is probably going to be pretty all right for this holiday. The question here is definitely PlayStation, because they had such a rough last quarter, like so rough. And like I said, the early signs, this isn't a lock, but the early signs, because we're like halfway through April now, I'm looking at the retail, and the retail's not looking good for PlayStation 5 right now. So it looks like at least the early part of this current quarter might be very hard on Sony as well. So if they have two very rough quarters, it makes it a lot more, questionable if they're going to be able to turn this around for a holiday. Microsoft, I think, is probably all right, Benji. Sony is very hard to say. And is that why PSVR 2 is rumored to be delayed? The rumor is they were targeting late 2022, but it's not going to be early 2023. It could be a factor, but I'm guessing it's probably, just all kinds of stuff. Yeah, probably all kinds of stuff for PSVR 2, but that's my thoughts. I think Microsoft will be all right. Sony's very hard to say. Very hard to say. Thanks for a great turnout and great questions, everybody, considering how slow the news cycle's been. I'm going to go for about 20 more minutes, and then I'm going to have to bounce, but we got about 20 minutes left in chat. Eddie Brock. Benji, boy, what's up? Hope you're doing well. I feel like studios like Bend, Media Molecule, and London might end up on the chopping block if their next titles aren't a hit. Do you agree? They closed Cambridge for one failed game. Here's what I'll say. Bend, I really don't think so, because Bend can at least... They've at least proven with Days Gone that they can definitely develop like a very big AAA game that can still sell millions of units. Like Days Gone still did sell millions of copies. Now, was it enough to like get a sequel? No, right? As we clearly have seen. But we also know that that game didn't lose money. It just wasn't super duper profitable. I don't think you want to right now in the current industry close anyone, because when the demand for content is so high, any studio that's capable of making a full-on, big-budget AAA game, you aren't going to be wanting to close that studio right now. So I think Bend specifically is very, very safe. Media Molecule here is a real wild card because y'all, and I hate to say this because I love their creativity, Media Molecule hasn't had a hit in forever. It has been a long time since they've been able to have a hit. I don't think they'll be closed because I think they're pretty much immune to it because they're such a creative studio that it looks just great to have on the portfolio that you're supporting creativity like this. So I think they're safe from being closed, but I think in terms of getting like a big budget for their games, yeah, they're very on the edge of like still existing. Again, I cannot see Sony closing them because the pushback would be pretty freaking huge. Like, hey, this is your team that's all about creativity and doing weird stuff and like, fun, happy stuff that's really colorful. Like, I just think they would get a lot of pushback and they know it. So Media Molecule is probably not at risk of being closed, but they are at risk of being like, hey, you guys can exist, but we can't necessarily trust you with a lot of money for your projects because they're just not selling. So closed, no, but they need a hit. There's just no other way to face it. I still want them to be as creative as always. I still want them to be awesome with what they're doing, but they really need to keep in mind, how can we pair that with also being financially successful? Because they, at least over the last, decade even, have been unable to do that. So they really need to find a way. Jason Benjamin. So I'm curious, do you think Astro Bot will become a PlayStation mascot? Yes, yeah, in a way. Team Asobi's next game seems to be a new IP. Why do you think Team Asobi isn't making a sequel to Astro's Playroom? Is he a gimmick? No. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm like 99% sure that their next game is a Astro PSVR game. I could be totally wrong on this, but I'm pretty much like certain that that's what's happening. So a follow-up to Astro's Playroom, I don't think so. But a follow-up to the original Astro Bot that was a PSVR game, maybe they're going to call it something different. I'm pretty sure it's what they're working on. It's going to be some sort of Astro game for PSVR 2. Now, they may also have a new IP in development as well. That would not surprise me at all, because the goal, it seems, for Team Asobi is to grow over time and become bigger. But they also are very good at creating stuff for new hardware. The original Astro Bot's one of the best PSVR games. Astro's Playroom is still one of the best showcases of the DualSense controller. They're going to want them to show off what they can do with PSVR 2. So he can become a bit of a mascot, but not like to an insane level, because I don't think those games are ever going to sell 20 million units. Like, it's not going to be as much of a mascot as Kratos is, or even Aloy. But an important like franchise, I think so. Venom Harness, with the huge demand for PS5 and huge problems with shortages, do you think the PS4 support by first and third party titles will be extended until 2023 or 2024, until the PS5 becomes available in stores? Yes, I am expecting first party games to still support PS4 in 2023. And there's a key reason for this. I can actually give you this right here. If this isn't a wake-up call about why Sony's doing cross-gen, I don't know what is. So listen to this, y'all. PlayStation 5 is clearly the platform that is moving the majority, right? It is the leader on these first-party games. Like, it is the one pushing the more software. But at the same time, listen to this. In Europe, y'all, we just got this data today. For Gran Turismo 7, 64% of sales in Europe were on PlayStation 5. So the lead platform, but a whopping 36% were on PS4. Y'all, almost a third of Gran Turismo 7 sales were on PlayStation 4. You just can't throw that away right now. Like, you just can't do it. Can you imagine if a third less, GT7, you sold a third less of your units because it wasn't cross-gen? I know as a player, like, if you're on PS5 already, it kind of sucks because you want to see what can these consoles do when they're not attached to last gen at all. But financially, GT7 would have sold basically a third less units, which is a giant. When you're talking about a game being profitable, 36% of your sales is so freaking important. So I think you are going to still see cross-gen even into 2023 for first-party games. Do I expect that to be all of them? No. It's just like it hasn't been all of them yet. They've had stuff like Demon's Souls. They've had stuff like Ratchet and Clank. I could see The Last of Us Remake, for example, being current-gen only. So I think they could have some, current gen only stuff. But yes, even in 2023, I think you will continue to see cross-gen games from Sony first party, just because they just do not have the install base and they're struggling to get it there. When you're still selling a third of your games on your last gen console, you kind of need to keep supporting it. So 2024 might be a stretch. By then, Venom Harness, I think we are fully next gen only. But 2023, I still think, yeah, you'll see some projects from Sony that are on PS4. Yes, some, not all, but some. I think we just had a super chat drop. Let me hit that super chat. Oh, I just see Pio's in chat. What up, Pio? Pio White Wolf, what up, my man? All right, Benji here. Okami Games, what up, Okami? Man, I'm loving all the cool people we've had in chat lately, y'all. Been some super cool people. What's up? Love all my regulars, but it's cool seeing some new faces. Not new, but you know what I mean. It's cool seeing a lot of different people in the chat. We had Snowbike Mike last week. That was hype, right? Benji here with a 5. The Switch sold more in March this year in Europe than last year. Yeah, it's incredible. It's honestly incredible. Can the Switch sell 20 million systems next fiscal year? Is this unprecedented? Maybe. Maybe, Benji. Not impossible. Not impossible. Switch's legs are unbelievable. I mean, we haven't seen a console with legs like this since the PS2. That's just a fact. Can it do 20 million next fiscal year? It's possible. I would not rule it out. Especially considering when Zelda going to drop. I mean, Zelda, it's got to be this next fiscal year, right? So, I mean, unless it's past March 2023, but that's kind of hard to believe, right? That it would be later than March 2023. I mean, maybe it is. We know it's not this year anymore, but man, if it's out of this fiscal year, that would be a bit surprising. I will say this, Benji. I think to hit 20 million systems this fiscal year, they probably do need Zelda, because there are some markets where Switch is slowing. You know, Japan, it's still selling great. So when I say slowing, this doesn't mean, oh my God, it's falling off a cliff. It just means even though Europe appears to be up year over year, Japan it's not, and there's a lot of evidence that in the US it's starting to slow down a bit as well. So Switch is going to start slowly creeping down. 20 mil is not impossible. I think if they have Zelda, it's probably pretty likely. If they have Zelda, I think they can do it. If they don't, it's more of a toss-up. Highlander here with a 5 super chat. Hey, Benji, hope you're doing good. Thoughts on Elon Musk trying to buy Twitter? Oh, yeah, we can talk about this. So, I'm like one of those people that's like of two minds about Elon Musk. There's some stuff I really respect Elon on, specifically SpaceX. If you guys have followed me or been in my chats before, I'm a huge fan of astronomy, space. I believe that the future of humanity is expanding into space. I think that's very, very important over the next couple centuries. I know that sounds weird, but if you're looking long term for humanity, and we're talking centuries, right? Humanity, unless we kill ourselves, will hopefully be around for hundreds, thousands, and who knows how much longer, right? Getting into space is going to be very important long term, not just for colonizing other worlds, but things like asteroid mining and things like this. It's going to become very, very important long term, right? That's without even going into like expanding into, livable space environments. So I really respect the work they're doing with SpaceX. At the same time, I find Elon to be a bit of a weird dude. I don't hate Elon like some people do. I do find him a bit weird. And out of all of the things that Elon is good at, because here's the reality, whether you hate Elon Musk or you're one of Elon Musk's, fanboys, I'm not saying you specifically here, Highlander, I'm just saying anybody, right? He's a very polarizing person. Some people literally hate Elon Musk. Some people adore Elon Musk. I'm kind of somewhere like in between. I definitely don't hate him, but I'm not his fanboy either. I kind of respect some of the stuff he does and whatever. One thing, though, I think he would be very bad at, to be honest, is running a social media platform. He does a lot of things great. There's a lot of things he is very talented in. Even if you hate the guy, there's no debate. The guy is a legit genius. He's a very smart person. They're doing incredible stuff in the tech world. but I don't see him as someone that's good at running a social media platform. I really hope this does not happen. That is not going to be one of his strengths. He does not need to be in charge of Twitter. I love Twitter. It's my favorite social media experience. And I think that he's not the right person for that job. Is he the right person to run SpaceX? Yes, I actually do think he's the right person to run SpaceX. No, I don't think he's the right person to run Twitter. So I hope not. I hope not. That's not hating on Elon. I don't think he should be running Twitter. It does not seem like the right person for the job. So that's my thoughts on it. Thank you for that super chat. All right, man, tons of questions today. You guys always bring the questions. I can always count on you no matter what. Even if it's a slow news week, I can always count on you guys to bring the questions. You guys rock. I love doing this. Okay. Where did we leave off? Miles Morales. Benji. PlayStation have a really strong partnership/relationship with Square Enix with many exclusive titles. Could they eventually cave and just let PlayStation fully acquire them? I've talked about this in the past. I don't think it's something that's impossible. It's, again, not something that I think is likely. Like, if you were asking me to bet on it, are the odds over 50%? No. I think there's several things that get in the way of that. But at the same time, I don't think it's impossible. It's just probably unlikely. So we'll have to see long term. But if I was to bet on it right now, Miles, I would bet no. But it's not impossible. But there's some hurdles there for sure. Batman Forever, if you had to bet on what Insomniac next spin-off Spider-Man games, what character would you choose? Venom, Black Cat, Miles, Gwen Stacy. Choose 3 spin-offs that you think will most likely happen or rank them most likely to unlikely. Ooh, great question. Here's what I'll say. The best choices out of those, in my opinion, are going to be Venom or Gwen Stacy. So, first of all, Venom, because he's a hugely popular character. Look at how those movies did, even without being very, critically well received. The Venom movies were still gigantic. And we know that Venom's going to play a huge part in the sequel. This isn't a spoiler, y'all. He's literally in the trailer. So, obviously, Venom's going to play a huge part in the sequel. So, it depends on how Venom is positioned by the end of that game. If Venom is, beaten and, not out on the loose or whatever, and he's like a straight bad guy and not necessarily an anti-hero, because that's the other question, right? In this game, is Venom going to be a full-on, just a full villain? Or is he going to be more anti-hero, kind of like how the movies position him, right? That's going to be also a big thing. If they are playing him in this game as a full-on villain only, hard for me to think he gets his own game, but if they go more the anti-hero route, makes sense. Gwen Stacy, I think, is going to be a very important character to bring into the Spider-Man games, or at least, whether she gets a spin-off game or she becomes a prominent character in the games, because it is lacking a really big, strong, awesome, woman, girl, whatever you want to say, character to play as, right? They tried to do that with Mary Jane in the first Spider-Man game as a playable character, but I think her segments weren't that well received, right? Because they were really stealth based, and people were like, I want to play as a superhero, not as just a regular person. So one way to counterbalance that, to still get that representation, is to have Gwen Stacy in these games, right? She's a super playable, awesome character. Black Cat kind of also falls into that category where you could do it, but I think Gwen Stacy would actually be more cool because she's a spider character. So as a number one, I'm going to tie them. I'm going to say Venom and Gwen Stacy. Those are the two I think Insomniac should really look at. Spider-Gwen, right? Those two neck and neck. Below that, I would put, Black Cat third. I think Black Cat's probably the least likely of the three. Ghost Tunnels. Do you think PlayStation will acquire Division and Firewalk Studios next, just like how they acquired Haven Studios pretty early? Yes, I would say yes, likely. Not for sure, but yes, likely, if they like the stuff they're making. Yes. Depends on how the games look, right? The fact they were willing to buy Haven so early says to me that they're really confident in what Haven's making. So I guess it would I would say it depends on the state of those projects. But if they're looking very, very good, yeah, they might want to acquire them early. Great question here from Benji. This is such an important one I see brought up all the time. Benji says, are game sales still a good indicator of a game's performance? Well, it really depends. Here's what I will say. Doing what I do and what other people do, you know, you guys know I'm not a pro at this. I do this all in my spare time. So it's hard for me to compare myself with someone like Daniel Ahmed or Matt Piscatella or somebody like that. People want to always include me with those guys. I take that as a huge compliment, but they get paid to do that professionally while I'm just a guy on YouTube and Twitter talking about it. But I'm really passionate about it, right? So I do a lot of research on this stuff and try to give good takes. I can tell you for people like me and like guys like them, it's actually harder than ever to piece out what exactly is successful financially and what's not. There was a time period, Benji, you go back really all the way until like the 360 and PS3 generation. It was really kind of after that that things started to change. But you go from the beginning all the way to basically 360 and PS3, and you knew if a game was successful strictly by how many units it sold, right? You looked at a game, how much did it sell? If it sold a lot of units, there's just zero doubt about it. It was successful. And if it sold not very many units, there's no doubt it wasn't successful, right? Like, it was very clear cut. You could just look at the sales data and you'd know how a game did. You might not know exactly how much money it made, but you'd know success or flop. Nowadays, it has become way harder for a variety of reasons. First of all, there could be a game that sells an okay amount of units physical, right? Or not physical, but just raw sales, a decent amount. Not a huge number, but it's pumping out a ton of DLC sales or a ton of microtransaction sales. And that could be posting huge amounts of revenue and profit. Or it could be a game that's free to play and that game isn't selling anything. And you have really no idea unless they tell you how much it's generating in microtransactions. Or you could have what we're seeing now with subscriptions, where a game, it's so hard to tell, you know, if it's going to be super financially successful based off of how is it doing within Game Pass, for example, or things like this. So Benji, I would say, are sales still an important metric? Yes. Sales are still definitely an important number to look at, right? There's a reason NPD still comes out. There's a reason the sales charts still come out. And there's a reason why, and I don't say this in like a self-congratulatory way, there's a reason why a lot of industry people follow me, and that is because they're looking at sales data, right? And that's one of the things I cover. So sales is definitely still important, but is it the only indicator, or like, you know, you can 100% know how a game performed only on sales? I would say no. Of course, the outlier being if it sells a bajillion units, right? Like, if a game's selling 20 plus million copies, yes, it was successful. All of these other metrics don't matter. But I'm saying these games that are more like in the middle, you know, that it's like it's sold decent, but it hasn't sold 20 million units. So then it starts to get a little murkier. You know what I mean? But so there's just a lot more at play you have to look at besides just a sales chart. But they're still very important, yes. They're still definitely important. Joe, Benji, with PlayStation cross-platform games causing pricing controversies, and with more people waiting for a PS5 than expected, is Sony thinking maybe we should have made them next gen? I'm not sure if I understand the question. Let me see it again. Cross-platform? Oh, you're saying, should the cross-platform games been next-gen only, or are you saying should have they been last-gen only? Next-gen only, I hate to say this, it would have been a mistake, honestly. I think we have enough data now, it would have been a mistake. They actually did make the right call about having Horizon and Gran Turismo and games like this cross-gen for now. Again, it would have been amazing to see what they could look like as PS5 only, not on PS4 at all, but we've seen sales play out that it's still important enough. I mean, if you're still selling 20 to 30% of these units on PS4, I mean, that could be the difference between profit and not profit. So they made the right call there. Last gen only would have definitely been a mistake. So honestly, I think they made the right call. Cross-gen for these games right now makes sense. Yeah, it does. It just does with the current install base. It does make sense. Samuel Tolbert, what is up, Samuel? Good buddy of mine. Love Samuel. Great to see you here, my man. Benji, hope you're doing well. With Xbox Series sales having a strong quarter, do you think it changes how well Starfield will do later in the year? What a good question, Samuel. No doubt, yes, it helps. There's no doubt it helps. I would love to see Xbox be able to continue this momentum throughout the year. I think that's important. Just having one great quarter is nice, but if the next 2 quarters, let's say, fall off a cliff, that would be pretty disappointing. But since we know Starfield is a current gen only game, so it's a very important metric. Do I think that the install base increasing is important and will help? Yes, abso-freaking-lutely. Yes. They need to get as many Xbox Series consoles out there as they can before November, because that's a huge game for them, and we know it's not cross-gen. So yeah, Samuel, no doubt it helps. No doubt it helps. Now, Starfield's going to sell a ton on PC. I think it's going to sell a lot on console. I think there is a pretty good chance that Game Pass cannibalizes Starfield a bit on console. That doesn't mean I think it's going to sell nothing. We even saw Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5 at launch still sell a ton of copies, even though they're on Game Pass. So do I think it means it's going to sell... Starfield's going to sell no units because of Game Pass? No. It's going to still sell a lot on console, but I think Game Pass might cannibalize it a little bit on the console side. Specifically on PC, though, it's going to be giant. Starfield's going to be huge on PC. Trust me. Huge on PC. Antonio 420, how many copies has Elden Ring sold now? Well, we got the 14 million announcement quite a while ago, right? Or was that was 12? That was 12. Why am I saying 14? We got the 12 million unit announcement quite a while back. I think they're over 15 million. Yeah, I don't think they're at 20 million yet. Some people are theorizing they're at 20 million. That to me seems high. I think they'll be at 20 million for sure before the end of the year. But right now, I do think they're over 15. I do think they're over 15 million units now, yeah, which is insane. It's insane considering how recently that game came out. 20 would be crazy. But yeah. Exiza, hope I'm pronouncing that okay. The Witcher 3 is the best-selling RPG ever. I don't think Skyrim hit 40 million. It doesn't have the same big numbers like Witcher in Steam. Dude, this is a very hard one to say, because I had some people asking me that. They're like, hey, is Witcher now officially the biggest RPG? It could be, but we got that Skyrim number a long time ago. Long time. Like, when was the last Skyrim sales update? Man, it was a long time ago. Man, it was a long time ago. It was over 30 is what we found out. But when was that? That was in May. Is that right? May 2021 was the last time we heard? I'm seeing articles from May posted, but I don't know if that's exactly when he said that. I don't know. It's hard to say. Witcher may be higher, though, yeah. Oh, it's 2016 that 30 was, Samuel says. 2016. Oh, then Skyrim's still higher. Okay. If it was that long ago, then yes, Skyrim is still higher. If it was 30 million back in 2016, this game has had many releases since then, re-releases. So Skyrim's still going to be higher. What that number is, I don't know, but it'll be Skyrim and then Witcher. Witcher will be number 2. But long term, looking at the legs on Witcher 3, Witcher 3's legs have been outstanding. I mean, I'm fully confident Witcher 3 will get to 50 million units sold. So we'll have to see how that plays out over years. But if Skyrim really was 30 million in 2016, because I thought that was a long time ago we heard that, so I'm glad to see that. I would still put Skyrim ahead of it. But Witcher may be able to pass it. It could happen. Yeah, it could happen, because it's going to sell over 50 million. Legs have been outstanding. How much time do I have? Wow. All right. I only have time for a few more questions. I super apologize. I'm going to miss tons of questions like always, but I got to go. So let me hit a few more. I'm going to hit a few more before I leave. Few more before I go. I think we had a super chat hit. Let me hit this super chat. Where we at? Highlander here with a 10 at the end. Thank you so much, Highlander. Thank you so much. My daughter has been playing the new Lego Star Wars game. We are loving it. I see this having great legs. I completely agree, Highlander. So I haven't played Lego Star Wars yet. I completely agree with you, though, that legs are going to be amazing. Glad to hear you and your daughter are having fun. Couple reasons I think legs are going to be so good. First of all, Lego games in general have great legs. Like, even the Lego games that have had really low launches, like, comparatively, they usually stick around for quite a while. Even if it's at a somewhat low volume, they're still selling and selling and selling. So legs in general are usually good for Lego games, let alone one like this. This is my next point. It's like basically the best or like one or two best reviewed Lego games ever, and word of mouth through the roof. So you have great word of mouth on top of that. And like I said, I don't think you're going to get another Lego game for another couple of years, right? I don't think you're going to get the next Lego game in 6 months or 8 months like has happened in the past. I think it's going to be another, 1 to 2 years before you get another Lego game. So that'll keep selling as well. So, yeah, I mean, legs on this are going to be outstanding. Legs are going to be great. Yeah, Lego's going to be around for a long time. I agree. And then Ashu Neji saying Skyrim is 53 million. My only thing is I don't know if that's official. If that is official, then awesome. I know the 30 million number got announced. I'm not sure if over 50 million was ever officially confirmed or just estimated. Always got to be careful with estimates because those can wildly vary. It could be, though. Ashu, it could be an official announcement. I know 30 million was. I just can't remember if 53 is. I think that might be an estimate. All right, one or two more and I got to go. I apologize. I have to go to work. There's so many cool people in chat. I'm seeing tons of freaking questions from cool people. I have to go to work. So one or two more. Let me pull one or two more out and I'm going to go. Carnage Ghost is saying first time in chat. Sweet. Great to see you. And I'll answer your question because you say, hope you get to my question. Let me get to it for sure. Carnage Ghost 2 VS. Benji, do you think PlayStation will fill the void they have in their first-party lineup? They don't have JRPG, RPG, fighting, open world, racer. What makes them fill these voids? Some of these I think they'll fill and some of them no. Fighting game, actually, yes. I think you are going to see a first-party fighting game. Now, whether that's going to be them buying a fighting game studio or funding someone to make an exclusive, right? Because that's the other thing. Because right now, internally, they don't really have a team to make a fighting game, at least not with any experience. So that would be a radical departure. So they either need to fund one or they probably need to buy a studio with experience on that. Either way, though, I do think a fighting game will happen because Sony has put a lot of support behind fighting games in general. We know they bought Evo on their own channel on PlayStation YouTube. They're constantly hosting things like Mortal Kombat tournaments. They've had strong partnerships with Street Fighter. So Carnage Ghost fighting in some sort, yes. I think you will see a big exclusive fighting game on PlayStation, but I don't know how that's going to come about. RPG, I think they're kind of positioning Horizon as that. If you've played Horizon Forbidden West, it's much more RPG, I think, than the first game. The combat, not so much, but like the dialogue and everything. I mean, it really does feel like an action RPG. JRPG, no. I think they're going to still depend on Square Enix and third parties for that. An open world racing game, it'd be smart of them considering how successful Forza Horizon's been, but I'm not sure if they'll do it. So out of that list, Carnage Ghost, I think the one you can probably very much count on is a fighting game of some sort, just because they're really in on fighting. Okay, like one or two more. One or two more and I'm out. Logan Hardy, Benji, are people downplaying Ragnarok critically? Original did beat Red Dead 2 at the awards. Do you think it can beat Elden Ring 2? Personally, and you have to keep this in mind, Logan, I am coming from the perspective that I believe Elden Ring is one of the best games ever made. So I'm probably going to have a little bit of bias here. I do my best to avoid bias, but keep that in mind. I want people to keep things in mind whenever I'm discussing stuff. I literally think Elden Ring is one of the best games ever made in the entire history of video games. I don't know if it's number one, but I think it is among the best ever made. So do I think that Ragnarok has a good chance of beating it? No. I just don't. Now, do I think that some people are forgetting that Ragnarok is going to probably, unless something catastrophic happens, be a serious Game of the Year contender? Maybe. Maybe. I think that the first trailer for Ragnarok made some people feel it looked a little safe for a sequel. And that, to be clear here, I'm not saying that in terms of like this game's going to be bad or like some of the crazy takes you saw where this game's reusing assets. Like basically every sequel does that. What I mean is, from what was shown, there was nothing there that you looked at that trailer and were like, holy cow, this is so different than the last God of War, right? Like there wasn't some crazy new gameplay mechanic that you saw that you were like, whoa, this is such a radical change from God of War 2018. Now, there could very well be things like that in this game. That was just the first trailer and we've seen nothing else from it. So I think that's one reason why you're not seeing people be like, going crazy over Ragnarok for Game of the Year, things like this. Just because that first trailer did look so similar. And again, this isn't meant as an insult because 2018 is one of the best games ever made as well. Like I do think it's one of the best single player games ever. But it did look like a very safe sequel. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. But I think that's one reason why people are kind of like, not going too wild with its expectations. Those things could be in the game and we're just not seeing them yet. But when God of War 2018 was shown, that was blowing minds because it looked like nothing you'd seen out of God of War before. Besides Kratos, everything else was like brand new. You're like, holy crap, I can't believe God of War has become something like this. Whereas this looked like just an evolution of the last game, which is not a bad thing. I'm just saying it makes it a little bit harder, I think, to compete with something like Elden Ring where they did kind of revolutionize in a lot of ways the way open worlds work. If you've played Elden Ring to completion, it's not a perfect game. There are some things you can point out, but like the way the open world flows and connects is truly unbelievable. So it's something you can really point to where it's pushing gaming forward. So we'll have to see. Is it impossible? No. I don't think it's impossible Ragnarok beats it at the Game Awards, but I do think it's going to be a tough battle. That Elden Ring is right now, I believe, truly the front runner. Yes, it's going to take something pretty crazy to beat Elden Ring. All right, one more and I'm out. I wish I could do tons more, but I'm going to just pull one more random one and I got to go. All right, I'm going to get the last one here. Chris saying, Benji, it seems Xbox is performing really well in USA and UK. Yes, you're correct. Possibly outselling PS5 as things stand. So current lifetime sales, PlayStation 5 is still ahead of Xbox in both those markets. But yes, those two markets are still up for grabs this generation on who will have the bigger install base at the end of the gen. Yes, that is true. Any other markets you think it has a chance to see bigger success than we anticipated? Thanks. I do, Chris. The one that stands out to me here is going to be South America and Mexico. Those are the two that stand out to me as other areas where they could really find success. Aaron Greenberg tweeted out, and I cannot remember. I really apologize. He was in one of the South American countries. It was not Brazil. I know it wasn't Brazil. I cannot remember where it was. I really apologize. If someone's from this country, I really apologize. I just can't remember because this was a bit back now. He was somewhere in South America. I don't think it was Colombia. I just cannot remember. And he had mentioned how Xbox was the market leader in that country. And we know Xbox has traditionally had a lot of success in Mexico. That's one of the reasons why they held that Xbox, big Xbox event there in Mexico. Because they have a lot of success there with franchises like Gears of War. Franchises like Halo are super popular there. So I would say that's the other one to really keep an eye on this generation. Europe, I know Xbox is doing really well there right now compared to PlayStation, but I do still believe that PlayStation will, at the end of the generation, outsell Xbox by quite a lot in Europe when it all is said and done. US and UK, we already know are going to be strong markets for Xbox, but keep an eye. I know not a lot of data comes out of it, but something that can be important for them this generation, South America and Mexico. I would say yes, for sure. Okay, everybody, I got to call it there. Thanks for another great episode of the live chat. I wish I could keep going. I wish I could answer all of your questions because there's freaking tons of them. Some very cool people in chat. So thank you everyone who showed up during a slow news week. I just have to go to work. So I super apologize if I missed your question. If I did, bring your question next week. We will be back for another live chat next week. We do one of these every single week. So bring it over next week. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Follow me on Twitter if you don't already. I'm sure pretty much everyone here already does, but I'm Benji-Sales on Twitter as well. Just in case you don't, stay safe, play some games, and I'll see you all either here on YouTube next week or I'll see you on Twitter very soon. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye. Bye, 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 bye.